FDA recently revoked the emergency use authorizations for 3 COVID vaccinations while simultaneously greenlighting 4 new COVID-19 vaccines with 2025 and 2026 formulas. The Secretary of Health and Human Services put out a statement immediately. He was in touch with the CDC and he actually traveled to Georgia.
Back on the CDC, there was reporting that some of the initial problems between RFK and the CDC director stemmed from miscommunications or differences on vaccine policies. So I wonder if you could just say whether or not the president believes that the COVID vaccine should be available to and covered by insurance for all Americans regardless of age and pre-existing conditions.
What I will tell you is that the FDA recently revoked the emergency use authorizations for 3 COVID vaccinations while simultaneously greenlighting 4 new COVID-19 vaccines with 2025 and 2026 formulas. The reason for the revocation of that emergency use authorization is because obviously the COVID pandemic and the public health emergency is over. But just to correct the record, because there's been a lot of misinformation on this, the FDA's decision does not affect the availability of COVID vaccines for Americans who want them. We believe in individual choice. That's a promise both the president and the secretary have made, and it's a promise they have now delivered on.
Question, if I could, Karoline. Second question, if I could. Sorry. I wonder if you could answer why the president hasn't acknowledged the shooting at CDC headquarters that took place earlier in August, where a police officer was killed, and it was reported that the motivation for the shooting was somebody who was really unhappy with the effects of the COVID vaccine.
We absolutely were very much aware of that shooting. The Secretary of Health and Human Services put out a statement immediately. He was in touch with the CDC and he actually traveled to Georgia to assess the situation and to mourn with the people who work in that building there. So,
Karoline.
Go ahead.
With respect to Labor Day, one of the most underrepresented groups right now are police officers. 30,000 police officers short in America right now. To Brandon's question, 1,300 short in Chicago, 3,000 short in New York, 500 short here in Washington, D.C. What can the White House, what can the president do to help recruitment of police officers? You've done well with the military and Border Patrol. What can be done to get more police officers on the streets of America?
Well, the president has certainly been very successful in recruiting federal law enforcement. If you look at the ICE recruitment campaign that was led by he and our Secretary of Homeland Security, we've seen more than, I believe, 130,000 applicants to join ICE, which is just amazing. There's more applicants now than there are jobs to fill, and we're very grateful for that. Clearly, Americans want to serve their communities. They just need a leader who encourages them to do so. So maybe Governor Pritzker should spend less time demonizing the police, more time trying to recruit more police, and more time trying to call the President of the United States to get crime in his city under control. The President wants to allow law enforcement, whether it's state, local, federal, to do their jobs, to arrest criminals, to put them behind bars, and to remove public safety threats from American communities. He'll continue to do that.
I have a couple questions on the shooting yesterday. The first one, this is the second shooting involving a trans-identifying shooter who specifically targeted Christians and Catholic kids. What kind of consequences do the gender-affirming therapists, doctors, or even the parents of these shooters face after these types of shootings?
Well, as for the parents and potential therapists in this case, again, all of that is still currently being investigated by the FBI. I know the Secretary of Health and Human Services this morning said that HHS is investigating perhaps links between some of these drugs and these prescription drugs that some of these minors may be taking and an increase in violence. And obviously we have mental health problems in this country that this administration and Secretary Kennedy will continue to speak out about and the work that we're doing to solve it.
Thank you. And just to follow up, I've seen a lot of calls for action, among these lawmakers saying that we shouldn't just be praying. One that I've seen on the right actually is calls for the FBI to institute a new class of domestic terrorism that involves trans ideology. Is that something that the administration would support?
I would have to check with the appropriate people on that.
Daniel. Thank you, Karoline. We saw some new revised economic data come out today showing the U.S. economy moved at a 3.3% clip, largely buoyed by a surge in capex. What's the White House reaction to this, and is this sort of the president's vision beginning to come to life after the Big Beautiful Bill was passed in July?
Yes, I mean, look, we did say that once the Big Beautiful Bill was signed into law, we're going to see the effects of this massive pro-growth piece of legislation. As I laid out for you as we head into the Labor Day weekend, there's many positive economic indicators that the American people can be hopeful about. But don't forget, we are reversing 4 years of reckless spending from the previous administration of slamming regulations down the throats of American business owners and consumers across the country. But the administration is working very hard to unravel all of that and to ensure that small business owners and workers are thriving and that they have more money in their own pockets to spend. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karoline. Back on the CDC, there was reporting that some of the initial problems between RFK and the CDC director stemmed from miscommunications or differences on vaccine policy.
I'm curious if administration officials are pushing back on the president's agenda, privately, publicly, however, should they fear to lose their jobs going forward?
Look, I think if you're doing your job well, and if you are executing on the vision and the promises that the president made to the public who elected him back to this office, then you should have no fear about your job. Just do your job. That's what this president wants to see. He wants to see people solving problems. He wants to see the people who have the privilege of serving the American taxpayer and the federal government abiding by the wishes of the American taxpayers who overwhelmingly reelected him in this cabinet to make America great again, or in this case, make America healthy again.
On the Intel deal, where the U.S. got a stake in that company, there's two things I want to ask about that. The first is, what did the U.S. get back in return for that deal? And the second thing is, what are the future plans for giving any form of money to another company? It could be through the CHIPS Act, like this deal, or some other form of funds. What are the plans there by this White House administration?
Well, look, as you know, Brian, very well, because you cover it often, the Intel deal is still being ironed out by the Department of Commerce. The T's are still being crossed, the I's are still being dotted. It's very much still under discussion. But the president's thinking, I can share with you, is certainly to ensure that the United States government is making our country wealthy again and is benefiting from some of these deals. And it's a creative solution. I know it's outside the box thinking, which is uncommon in this city, but it's something that he proposed and something that the Secretary of Commerce is working on putting into action. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline.
They hollowed out our factories and towns and betrayed the American working class by shipping jobs overseas and importing millions of low-wage migrants to replace American workers. Under President Trump, this national disgrace is over. American workers are, once again, being put at the center of national trade policy, and the dignity of American labor is being defended. As a result, President Trump has already brought in nearly $10 trillion in new private and foreign investments so that the top businesses in the world can create high-paying jobs in America and hire American workers to fill them. In fact, since President Trump took office, the economy has added more than 500,000 new jobs to the workforce. In a stark reversal from the Biden administration, all of that job creation has been driven by private sector growth, and all employment gains have gone to native-born Americans. Wages for blue-collar workers are now rising at the fastest rate in the past 60 years.